Hi, fifth graders. Let me just start by saying I really miss you. I wish we could all be together in the classroom, but I hope you're at least enjoying the nice weather that we have today. We're going to continue chapter 2 on our book, The Road to Freedom. The chapters don't have titles, but again, they have amazing illustrations, so I'm going to try and show you those illustrations before we begin each page. Yesterday in chapter 1, we learned that our main character is Emma, and that she is a slave, and so are her parents. Her father was sold unexpectedly, and they didn't even have time to say goodbye. And now their master, who owns them, is having financial problems, and Emma and her mother are worried that she's going to be sold. Either the mother or the daughter are going to be sold. So let's find out. They gathered up some food and clothes and ran away. So let's see how their journey gets started. I followed behind Mama, holding onto the back of her shawl so I wouldn't stumble. Real quiet, we passed rows of cabins and then ducked quickly into the woods nearby. Mama moved so fast I could barely keep up, and as we ran, I kept looking behind, hoping no one was following. Up above, the owls called out, and beneath our feet, branches and twigs cracked and snapped with each step. We stopped now and again to catch our breath, and then continued. The cloth on my feet didn't hold, so then I had to run barefoot. I didn't wear shoes on the plantation and my feet were rough and hard, but I could still feel every rock on the freezing, cold ground. We ran for so long and so far, I was sure we were in the north by now, but Mama said we still had days and days to go. I didn't tell Mama, but I wasn't sure I could take another step. I knew Mama was tired too, but thinking about what was behind us kept her going. We reached a spot where the ground got soft and I knew we were close to water. How would she know they were close to water? What clues told her they were close to the water? Yeah, it said the ground had gotten soft, so when water is introduced into the soil, it gets softer, it gets moist. We reached a spot where the ground got soft and I knew we were close to water. Croaking frogs and slithering sounds were all around us, and tree branches hung low as we pushed moss out of the way and walked to the river's edge. So some other clues that told us she was near water was that she heard frogs. That's usually a sign that there's water around. They don't like really dry areas. Okay, here's the next page. Based on the illustration, can you make a prediction about what is going to be happening on this page? The ice on the river was slick and smooth, and it burned my bare feet with its cold. We walked as fast as we could without slipping, but the wind was so strong. I had to hold on to Mama to keep from being blown away. Halfway across, we heard ice crack beneath us, and we backed up till we stood on the hard ice again. Mama said, "You're so light, Emma. You go on across first, and I'll follow behind. Better we go one at a time." I started out, stepping as lightly as I could, until I got to the solid part, but when Mama crossed, all I could hear was the cracking until she stopped, frozen and scared. "Walk on your toes, Mama," I yelled from where I stood. But just as Mama went to take a step, the ice broke. She jumped off the broken piece onto another piece, and then another. From what I could see, she hopped from one foot to the next, trying to keep from slipping into the water. I stopped breathing, waiting, hoping she'd make it across, because if she stopped, she'd sink into the river for sure. She was closer now, and I stepped forward, reaching out my hand to Mama. Only when I felt her hand in mine did I start breathing again, and I hung on to her, crying. "It's all right, Emma," she hugged back. "I'm just fine." I looked at her wet skirts where she dipped below the ice, and I knew we had to hurry to land. On the other side, I listened to the night sounds all around us, scared of the dark for the first time. Our fingers were stiff with cold, but we gathered up some sticks and leaves, whatever we could find to cover us from the slave catchers before the sun came up. They patrolled the woods and roads all day and night, hoping to find someone out, away from the plantation. And there was no telling where they'd be and when. A plantation is where they grow crops and generally use slaves to harvest those crops for them. Again, very common in the South to find plantations, not so much up in the North. Can you think about why that would be? Why do we find plantations in the South but not in the North? Mama pointed to a tree that was broken in half, and we placed the sticks against it and covered it with leaves. Shivering, we squeezed in and lay on the hard ground, covering ourselves with more leaves. We ate some of the ash cake and held onto each other to stay warm. I tried not to think of my pallet back in our cabin and the warmth of the fire. Mama's eyes were red and puffy. "You sleep, Mama," I said, the taste of dirt in my mouth. "I'll listen out." "You sure, Emma?" she asked, her voice heavy with sleep. I told her I'd wake her as soon as I got sleepy, and no sooner had I said it than Mama curled up, trying to stay warm. While Mama's breath got heavier, I sat up and listened. To stay awake, I thought of the master and the slave catchers and their dogs. Then I thought of Papa and wondered if he'd ever made it to freedom like my friend Hetty. When Hetty left last winter with her ma, I prayed for her safety every day. I watched for her, missing her, but hoping they didn't catch her and bring her back. I closed my eyes, pretending we were all together. Me, Mama, Papa, and Hetty, up north, free from the master. Before I knew it, sleep was on me. If you were Emma, in her position, and you had a best friend, and they ran away, deep down, would you want them to come back to you? Would you miss them so much that you felt like you really wanted them home with you? Keep in mind that being home means that they're captured by the slave catchers and brought back to become a slave. Would it be worth giving up that friendship so that your friend could be free? Or would you really truly want them with you? Today's focus is looking at illustrations and how the illustrator, who in this book is John Charles, so it's different than the author. The illustrator just draws the images. So we're focusing on illustrations and how those illustrations help make a story better. So on page 12 and 13, what is this illustration showing us? And again, I asked you to make a prediction about it. What were some of your predictions? Were they accurate? Did the illustration really give you a good idea of what was coming up in the story? How does this illustration add to the story? It shows us our setting, and it also shows how crossing the river makes Emma and her mom feel. The next pages 14 and 15, show us leaves and the ash cakes that Emma had talked about. What key significance do both of these items share? What's important about both of these items, the leaves and the food? They're both things that are necessary for Emma and her mom to survive. So even though they really don't seem like they have anything in common, they do. They're absolutely necessary for survival. The ash cakes give them food, which you need to survive, but what do the leaves give them? Why were the leaves necessary for their survival? Think back to what you heard in the story and what it said about those leaves. Do you remember? It talked about covering them up, so it was a way for them to hide and prevent themselves from being captured. Lastly, I want to look at the illustration on page 16. This was the very last page that we read. How does the illustration help us with the phrase that Emma said when she said, "Sleep was on me"? Again, how does this illustration, this image, help us better understand that phrase, "Sleep was on me"? Well, the image shows a girl sleeping. So sleep was on me means that she fell asleep. So a lot of us were probably able to infer from sleep was on me that it meant she was asleep, but this image really helps give us a better picture. Okay, what do you think? Do you think that these images really help tell the story? What do you think the images add to the story? So going back to chapter 1, looking through those images again. How are these images helpful? Are they necessary? Or just fun to look at? Why do we need them? I want you to comment below in the comment section when I post this assignment. Why do you think these illustrations are used? I hope you have a great day, and again, go out and enjoy that sun.